Welcome into the inaugural edition of Austin's Off the Air. This is the business program that replaces the session with Londa and David, and it's sponsored, as always, by Sherwood Austin Solutions. With over 40 years of combined sales success, Sherwood Austin Solutions can help diagnose and prescribe solutions for any problems in your business. Listen, a lot of business consultants only focus on the bottom line. Nay, not at Sherwood Austin Solutions. Londa takes a holistic approach to make sure all of your goals are being met. Reach out to Londa today by emailing Londa at SherwoodAustin.com. That's Londa at SherwoodAustin.com. It's a great time to be in business. Why not be in business with us?
Well, okay. That was a heck of an intro.
I'm very excited about the new branding for the great big radio program.
Yep.
Austin's Off the Air.
Yes. We have new toys.
Yeah.
As it were.
So this is our podcast version and kind of a behind the scenes look of our live radio show,
Right.
Austin's On the Air.
Right.
Because this is a podcast, it's Austin's Off the Air.
Thank you for that explanation.
I like that.
Yes, but we're not going to lose the flavor of what we do here because we're business people, because we consult businesses. This is always going to have that DNA running through it.
Absolutely.
Want to be clear about that.
Yeah. So the difference between this show and the radio show really only is...
I get to curse on the podcast.
No, that's not the difference. The difference really only is we're not doing current events.
Right, and it's
as
not
part of the
hyper-local,
program. That's
right?
exactly right.
Yeah.
It's for everybody. You know, our radio show is in Lafayette, Louisiana, and Acadiana, which is a region in Louisiana. Mm-hmm. So we focus on that area on the radio show.
That makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely. But our conversations are based on our lives and what's important to us. Right. That's what this show is.
And here we go.
There you go. Okay, Londa, what's the topic for this episode?
Okay, so because we promised behind the scenes look at us, because we also focus on business a lot, I thought it might be fun today to take a look back into our history of business. And you say in the intro, we have over 40 years combined sales experience. I actually think it's closer to 60 years.
Okay, I got you.
I know I've got 30 years in it.
Sure. And I've got 25 years in sales.
Yeah.
I was on the air for 15 years and then
got painfully a little more than 30.
Went into sales.
Ew.
Yeah.
A little more
no, I'm lying now because my first real job...
I'm helping him do the math.
...was Chess King at the Acadiana Mall where I sold men's clothing. That was straight sales. That was the same.
That's what I'm saying.
That was the same sales. And that was before I was, I was 16 years old when I got that job.
Yeah. So anyway, a lot of experience here and a lot of successful experience here.
That's right.
That's why we talk about it. I know for me, just about every sales job I've ever had, I was a top producer.
Right.
I was, on the top producer board, whatever you call it at your place, winning the prizes, doing the things. I've always been motivated by that kind of thing.
Sure.
You know, there's nothing better than being number one.
Okay.
Right. And so that was a big motivator for me. A lot of the time I loved, in my whole life, loved being number one. I loved recognition. I loved winning awards, all that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And so that's where a lot of my experience came from. And I'm a little bit like a sponge from a very young age, learning things about sales. And so we're going to take a little trip back for both of us. And you mentioned, and so I want to start there. What was your first job period in life? Not necessarily in sales.
I guess I was 15 because my first real job, maybe 16, I don't remember. I was a kid and I was old enough to work legally in Louisiana.
Okay.
So I think that was 15.
Okay.
I had little odd jobs in the summer. I'd be like a handyman's apprentice.
Yeah,
and all
but
that
I mean
stuff.
like a real...
My first real job where I wore a uniform to work and was going to work 8 hours a day was
W-2.
Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Okay.
And let me tell you something. My dad, being the guy running the market, did me no favors. And here's what I mean by that. The manager, Wilfred Pierre, says to me, David, you're not going to get any special treatment just because of your daddy.
Oh.
That struck me as terrible right then. So I decided that day, oh, that's it. I'm not doing this job. Screw that. Nope.
So you weren't there for very long.
No, I immediately went to my father and said, okay, I can't do this. I don't want to do it. Mm-hmm. They're being mean to me over there. I don't want to do it. And he said, well, you can't quit. And I said, why not? And he said, because you don't already have another job.
So this is the first really big lesson you learned about
That's exactly
work.
Right. So my dad told me, go to the mall, wear a suit and tie, and walk into every store you want to work at and ask for the manager. I said, really? Ask for the manager? Don't just ask for an application? He said, no, ask for the manager. When the manager comes out, here's what I want you to do. I want you to say, I want to be a part of your team, and stick out your hand to shake his or her hand. Mm-hmm. I did that. The very first store I walked into was Chess King in the Acadiana Mall. Ron Ford was that manager. He looked at me with my little hand sticking out and looked, at my tie and looked at my hand and goes, no kid's ever done that before. Okay, when can you start? And then he shook my hand. And that's how I got my job at Chess King. And I did that for my junior and senior year in high school.
Right. And this is an example of standing out.
Right.
In the marketplace. So I know that a lot of jobs today, you apply for them online.
Right.
And so that's something that's been frustrating to younger generations who were raised by people like you and I, who
Right.
taught them things like that because
Right.
we were taught by our parents or leaders in business early on. And it's frustrating for them because you go in and there isn't that option.
Right.
Oftentimes, I would say there is still that option in those kind of jobs. And sometimes you have to do both, right? So you can approach it, and I often talk about offline and online.
Right.
So you can approach it from both directions, and your offline needs to point to your online to your offline. And so that's just a good rule of thumb for marketing, period, including when you're marketing yourself, trying to find another position.
Sure.
Right. So that was great advice from your dad. And what would you say were some of your, lessons that you learned that you took with you from Chess King when you moved on, that maybe even still you use today?
Oh, well, it's funny that you say that, because one thing that I was trained to do at Chess King by Ron Ford was always greet people and ask them open-ended questions so that they communicate back with you.
Okay, so an example of the opposite would...
Can I help you? Nope.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the end of the conversation.
Right.
Hey, can I help you?
Are you looking for something special today?
Nope. That's right.
So what's an example of an open-ended question?
Hey, I'm so glad you guys are here. What can I help you find?
Right. Nothing is often the answer to that.
Right.
And
what do you say when they say nothing? Because I have an answer.
Go ahead.
Why would you have come in here if you're looking for nothing? You're looking for something. What is it?
And how can I help?
That's right.
That's right. There's always a way to turn it around.
Yes. But if the answer is no, then it's over.
And let me tell you that second part that you just said, you have got to say that with a smile on your face.
Absolutely.
So I would say for me, it's interesting that both of us, our first grown-up sales job, as
Right.
it were, neither one of us were grown-ups when we worked these jobs, but we're in clothing sales.
Sure.
Because Chess King was a men's clothing store.
Yep.
Right.
It's a trend shop, a men's trend shop.
Excuse me, a trend shop.
Yes.
And my first grown-up sales job, where I, similarly, I'd worked fast food before that, and at a grocery store, was at Nordstrom.
Okay.
And I would say that Nordstrom was absolutely foundational in me learning customer service, because 35 years ago, Nordstrom, those of you who are listening or watching, you'll know exactly what I mean. 35 years ago, Nordstrom was the cream of the crop.
I gotcha.
For customer service.
Sure.
It was chef's kiss. I mean, it was Ritz-Carlton kind of stuff, right?
Okay.
And you walked into a Nordstrom and there was something different. There was something special there. As a customer, it made you feel important.
Right.
Right? Today's Nordstrom, not the same, sadly. And I don't know why. Who cares? They haven't hired me to fix that problem. They could. But I learned there so much about that's where my love of systems started.
Right.
Because they gave me this little book and they taught me how to keep a customer book.
Okay.
And that has been a valuable skill up until and including today.
And what is a customer book?
Well, the way that they had it is, when you have a customer, you try to get as much contact information from them as possible. Today, we'd call it a CRM.
Sure.
Right? This is just your database.
Yeah.
But we kept it in a notebook and wrote it down, right? So you have their name, their mailing address, their, later on email address.
Right.
Their phone number. And back then, we put their credit card information in there. You had their credit card number, expiration date, all that stuff.
Well, and that makes sense because if you knew you were looking for a red scarf
That's right.
for Myrtle,
so
if a red scarf comes in, you call Myrtle and say, hey, Myrtle, that red scarf you were interested in is in.
Right.
Would you like me to charge it to your account?
When it's done right, you know what events are coming up. I remember the first big customer I had from my book that they taught me how to ask questions about people's lives, right? And basically we'd call that form today.
Right.
And I found out she had a cruise coming up in a few months.
Okay.
So I said, oh, you know what? We get some really fun spring items that would be perfect for your cruise. Do you want me to give you a call when we get those in so that you can preview? Nordstrom had a thing they used to do that, you could bring in your customers that you had in your book the day before things went out on the floor.
I gotcha.
And you could have them preview the items. And so I remember then I followed up because I put it in my little calendar, which was part of the book, follow up with so-and-so, going on a cruise. So there was a note section as well that you could write notes down, and followed up with her. And I sold a ton of stuff. I mean, I had her outfitted for that cruise, and that was so much fun to me. And, because everything they told me to do, I implemented immediately.
Yes.
And it made me really successful. And I think a key that anyone can take away is stay hungry, stay humble.
Yes.
Stay hungry, stay humble. If you're always hungry for knowledge, always hungry to learn, always hungry to implement, to execute on what you learn, and all of that, staying humble at the same time. I don't care if you're number one, always wanting to learn more and understanding the people around you have something to offer.
Yes.
Those are really, really important pieces to success.
I agree with that. And you know how you hear things about that's going to stay on your permanent record. And if you don't do this right, that's going to go on your permanent record. Because of Chess King, I had something on my permanent record that 20 years later helped me secure a builder relationship in the Pacific Northwest. Do you want to hear that story?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So when I worked at Chess King, they had regional sales competitions, right?
Okay.
And they would pick an item and you'd have to sell that item for the competition.
Okay.
Like in the Gulf South, trench coats don't sell very well. So one of our regional sales competitions was selling men's leather trench coats. Right?
Leather trench coat.
Correct.
This is not the market for that. So yes, okay.
Typically not the market for that, right? So we could see everybody in our region in the sales contest.
Right.
I was in first place for almost a full 12 months, right?
Whoa.
Yeah. As a kid, 16 years old, felt bulletproof, was selling my men's clothes at Chess King. And every kid who knew me from high school knew I was the guy at Chess King, right?
Okay.
So flash forward 20 years, maybe 19. I'm living in the Pacific Northwest. I'd been a broadcaster for 15 of those years, having nothing to do with any kind of clothing sales.
Okay.
And I leave a job as a director of sales for a group of 6 radio stations and become a lender, a mortgage lender.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep, I'm with you.
I, at that moment, decided I'd call on 30 real estate agents per day because I had a large income goal that I had to make up leaving being a director of sales in radio, right?
Okay.
So I saw 30 realtors and or builders per day.
Okay.
Right? And I say that because when I first moved to the Tri-Cities, every builder had an open house open every day of the week.
Right.
So I went to every open house that was open and every real estate office in town every day. Well, I'm 2 weeks into my new job as a lender. And there's this builder, and I don't know what they're called. This was 20 years ago now. Yeah, not 20. This was 18 years ago now. I walk in, and the builder was interesting because he was a drywall guy. So every single room in his model home in Pasco had a different wall treatment.
Okay.
Like you know. So I sit down with the sales manager for this building company. And I say, okay, tell me a little bit about you. And she says, well, I grew up in Houston and I used to manage a clothing store in, the Galleria or some mall. And I'm like, oh, cool. Which one? And she says, Chess King. I said, that is awesome. When did you do that? And she said, oh, I did that right after high school. So I'd say about 87 to about 92. And I said, well, that's really cool. My first real sales job was at Chess King. And she says, really? And I said, yeah, I loved it. And we could see all the stats from all the other stores around and, blah, blah, blah. And she says, so what's your name? I said, David Austin. And she said, oh, my God, are you that David Austin, the guy that kept winning all the sales competitions?
Shut up.
And I said, I am that David Austin. How are you? And I became their preferred lender. Second week in town.
And this is another good point. Stay hungry, stay humble, and always do the right thing.
Right.
Because you never know. You never know. And this is a thing that can keep you from getting discouraged, too. It can keep encouragement top of mind for you. Is if you just know that you did the right thing, right? I recently connected somebody to a big project, lots of money. I'm pretty sure I got screwed out of any profit for me in it. But here's why I'm not upset. I did the right thing.
You did.
I connected the right people.
Right.
And it made life easier and better for everybody involved.
Sure.
Eventually, that connection is going to come back to me somewhere, somehow, someday. And that's a great example of how those connections come back.
It's absolutely true.
Call it what you want. Call it sowing and reaping. Call it karma. Call it energy. I don't care what you call it. It's real. And you got to just believe everything's working out for me.
Sure. Yeah.
Maybe I can't see it right now, but everything's working out for me.
That's
that
right.
was an awesome story.
It absolutely happened. Isn't that crazy?
That is crazy.
I'm sitting in Pasco, Washington.
What's the likelihood of
2,900 miles away from
Synchronicity.
from where I was working at Chess King selling men's clothes during the late 80s and early 90s. And that manager from that mall in Houston knew my name from reading those sales sheets every week.
Wow.
You're that David Austin?
I mean, that time in your life as a kid, hitting that leaderboard every time, did the heavy lifting for 20-year later you.
That's true. And let me give you an example of how doing something naughty stays with you as well, okay? Because it was also on a sales call.
Okay, but make it quick.
Okay.
Go.
I was on a sales call in radio sales in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, about 20 years ago, working for Rebecca Breeding, and my local sales manager was Malcolm Adams. And I called on a dentist's office, and I'm sitting there talking to the dental hygienist who does the marketing for the dentist's office. And I said, so tell me a little bit about you. And she says, well, I'm from a town in Florida you've probably never heard of. And I said, okay, try me. And she said, Lakeland, Florida. And I said, well, that's funny that you mentioned Lakeland, Florida. I was there from the time I was 4 until the time I was about 6 or 7. And she said, really? I said, yeah. Where'd you go to elementary school? And she said, I went to Lime Street Elementary. And I said, oh my God, I went to Lime Street Elementary too.
Right.
And she says, really? I said, yes. And I said, what do you remember about the school? And this is what she said to me. There was a legend in the school of this little kid doing the kindergarten play who said God damn during the play. And
on a mic.
On a mic, a hot mic. And I said, oh my God, what year were you there? And, you know, she's about 5 years younger than me. And I said, I was that kid. And I was in Billy Goat's Gruff in the kindergarten play. And
this is one of my favorite stories.
Yeah. And I'm watching the two Billy Goats before me go over the bridge, right?
Yeah.
And the troll does his line, and he's holding the microphone because he's under the bridge, which is like desks built together, right?
Yeah.
And he's got the orange beard, and he looks like a troll. Mm-hmm. And, you know, who dare pass this way? And then the Billy Goat would go, it's me, the little Billy Goat. But you couldn't hear him because he held the mic like this, right?
But he's supposed to put it up.
He's supposed to put it up on the backside of the deal so the little...
Yeah.
So I'm the big Billy Goat. It's my turn. I get on the thing, and he does his thing, and the mic never comes. And I say, give me the goddamn microphone, as the microphone is coming up to my face, and all you hear is, goddamn microphone. The room went totally silent. My mother guffawed.
Yeah.
She thought it was the funniest thing she'd ever seen.
Silent, but for your mother, who was losing it.
Yes, lost it. I didn't get in trouble because of my mother's reaction. It stunned the teachers so much.
I'm going to tell you a secret of David Austin. And this is very serious. And this has to do with the whole energy karma thing.
Okay.
You have these things happen to you in life.
Right.
Because you believe that is your destiny in life.
Okay.
You really do. Having lived and been with you now for 3.5 years or however long we've been married.
Almost 4 now, but yes.
I see you absolutely live your life in this, what I call kind of this fairy tale space where you absolutely, positively to your core believe everyone likes you. Everyone wants to work with you. Everything works out for you. And there's nothing that can tell you any different.
There's only one differentiation from what you're saying.
Okay.
I believe I like everyone. I don't believe everybody likes me. I like everyone, and that's infectious.
Okay. And that's probably an important piece.
Yeah.
And you know, I said to you one time, what's it like to just have everything always work out for you? Because I come from a very different place.
Right.
I come from, you know, a pretty traumatic childhood and a pretty traumatic upbringing and you know, just like, God, it just felt like my whole life was just fighting and scratching my way to get any traction at all.
Sure.
Right. And the right doors never opened for me. Like it was, but I wonder how much of that is set in my own expectations, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So this is why I talk so much about mindset, because I've had to shift my mindset every moment of every day of my life.
Yes.
And you just live in that space.
Absolutely. It's like when I went to see Tony Robbins speak at this big mortgage conference, the Mastermind Summit in Las Vegas. Mm-hmm. He's up there talking about changing your state. And when you feel down, just hit your chest and change your state, right? And I can't relate to that at all.
Right.
Because up until then, I'd never had anything bad happen in my life.
Right. Now, do you get stressed out? Yes, you do.
Sure.
Also living with you for this long, I know. Do you get down in the dumps a little? Yeah, you do. But it never really affects you. It never lasts very long. You don't have to work your way out of it.
Right. Yeah.
It's really, really interesting. Okay, let's move on.
Okay.
You mentioned being in radio sales in Baton Rouge. You mentioned Rebecca Breeding.
Yep.
Malcolm Adams.
Yep.
Tell us how you... I don't want to know like how you came to that job or any of that. What I want to know is, what did you take away from that job as far as it applies to business or sales, or what were some of the more important lessons that you took away from that job, that experience, or those people?
Oh, that's a great question. And the answer is Malcolm Adams taught me the language of business.
Tell me what you mean by that.
I didn't know the language of business. A lot of things, like when somebody talks about cap rate on a building, I didn't know any of that. When you go on a car dealership, I didn't know that people walking on the lot were called ups. I learned 100% of my language for business from Malcolm Adams.
Excuse me.
You know, and Rebecca Breeding, she's the person who believed in me and believed I could do straight commission sales, which before then I never did. At Chess King, I got an hourly rate and quickly became the trainer of all the new hires because I was good at it. I was a natural, right?
Right.
And Ron really took me under his wing and showed me everything he did. I really do believe he was grooming me to replace him at Chess King. Every minute that I was there with him, he was showing me how to be him.
Right.
And I thought that was great.
Right.
Rebecca did the exact same thing with me.
Malcolm did the same thing.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And I believe she hired him to do that for me.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now, she taught you a great lesson in sales that you have carried with you forever and ever. And do you remember what that is?
I don't know what you're referring to specifically. She told me several great lessons. So which one are you talking about?
Well, I'm talking about the one that kind of leaned into who you are really, your nature.
Yep.
And
Yep. She told me to use what I used to get laid in college to sell.
And not she didn't mean
fool around with the customers, but
Right.
use my personality, use my charm.
right.
And then break down the barriers, the communication barriers,
And
right?
I swear to you, you and I need to put together a workshop where we talk about how dating is like sales and sales is like dating.
is sales and
Yep.
sales is dating.
Yep.
So if you're good at dating, you should be a salesperson.
Very true.
Yeah.
Very true.
Now, I'm not the kind of salesperson that some daters are, and here's what I mean by that. Some people, I was told this by a guy, and I'm not going to say who he is, but he told me he used to use the law of averages when he would go out to bars. He knew that if he talked to 9 women, one of them would be interested.
Okay.
So he went to check off his 9 women, and when he was about 6 in, he'd be like, okay, I'm almost done with the night. Let's go.
Okay.
Because statistically, it took...
For him.
Yes, for him, 9 conversations to get one taker.
Well, at least he knew his conversion rate, right?
And, right. And for me, I never, ever thought that way or sold that way. Everybody I talk to, I want to have a connection with. So I'm there to find the connection. And there are some people that you cannot connect with. They're not your people.
These are all really excellent points. I love that I didn't even have to coach you to get to these places. I knew this is what makes me, by the way, a great business coach. I know the right questions to ask to elicit the responses that are going to be the answer. Right. I'm not looking for a specific answer, but I know the kind of question to ask. That's the art of coaching, by the way, is asking the right questions. And I mean, we couldn't have scripted this out better had we tried.
Right.
So I love this because you just made a couple of really, really good points that I hope people caught.
So what were they?
Well, I can't go back and give them word for word.
Okay.
But rewind the tape. You know what I mean? Rewind the tape.
The only reason I say that is because when I'm talking, I'm not paying attention to what's coming out of my mouth.
Right.
I'm just talking. It's free form. It's like jazz.
For example, you said you're interested in everyone.
Yeah.
And you're looking for the connection.
Right.
Right. And that is it's hard to teach that.
I gotcha.
It's hard. I've tried. Man, if you're not a natural connector with people,
right,
you can learn. You're going to have to work harder though.
Yeah.
And you can learn, but that really is part of the magical, mystical part of the art of sales is being able to connect with people. And when you learn to connect, you're a natural connector. I was not as natural, but I learned I'm interested in people. So that's a key that really helped me. I'm very interested in people, who they are, what their story is.
Yeah.
So that for me was the thing that allowed me to then put on top of that natural curiosity, some skills about finding the connection. Right.
Yeah.
And all I had to do was learn how to ask questions to get to the common ground.
I gotcha.
And now we're running, right? Because once you find the common ground, you're running together on the track, right?
That's exactly right.
And then being the natural connector, and as long as you can connect people to solutions, I think you're always going to win. You'll always win.
I like that.
You'll never lose as long as you keep that forefront in your mind. Connect people to solutions and find out, all the sales training talks about finding the pain, and solving the problem of the pain,
right?
Or find the pleasure. And then, you kind of just feed into the pleasure but it really, there's so much more to it than that.
When you have a product that you believe in, you can sell to anyone if you believe in it. And I think belief is more important than knowledge.
And you and I, we've talked about this before. You and I disagree on this point.
Okay.
Because I don't think you have to believe in your product.
Well, if you're if you're disingenuous, you don't.
I disagree. You have to believe in your product.
I do.
For me, I don't have, and I have sold products I did not personally believe in, but here's how I made it work for me.
Okay.
Because I'm not disingenuous.
Right.
It worked for someone.
Okay.
It worked for someone.
Or it wouldn't be for sale.
Well, or I had, you have testimonials, right?
Sure. Yeah, I guess.
It worked for this person.
Yeah.
So it works, right? And that's really all I need.
I gotcha.
Whether I ever even used it.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if it's a product.
Yeah.
Right?
We need to stop talking about this right now because I don't want to give away all of the content in one program.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Oh, man, there's so much more. We've got to do a part 2 because there's so much more of our history of sales and leadership that we didn't share. We barely scratched the surface. I got through my first job.
I got through my first job. And then I talked about how I got a builder because of my first job.
Yeah, I mean,
that's weird.
We've got so much more to share. We'll definitely do a part 2.
It's Austin's Off the Air. If you want to listen to Austin's On the Air, you can do that Monday through Friday from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. on News Talk 98.5 FM and 1520 a.m., the talk of Acadiana. Otherwise, we'll see you back here again next week. I'm David Austin.
I'm Londa Sherwood Austin.
And we'll be back.